on going for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes, and I was like, why'd the music stop? I want to hear more. But they're good. I'm very grateful to them, and they're really opening up the spirit here, I feel. The reading I picked about lineage, I've heard that a lot, that we want to create true love, true life, and true lineage in our families, in the world, all over, and that lineage is the most important. And if you think about life, if you don't have life, you're not alive. If you don't have love, then what's the point of living? If you don't have lineage, then there's no future before you. So they all seem important, but lineage, that might be the one that you don't suspect. True father and true mother both said forthright that lineage is the most important, and I've really tried to understand that. I've read it several times, so I'm still kind of grappling with that and trying to understand that. And she really emphasizes the importance. Please inscribe this in your hearts. I cannot emphasize this enough. I think this reading kind of came to me one day when I felt I needed it. I was thinking, we have great values. We have an awesome God. We have something beautiful that we're trying to create. Why is it so difficult? Not just to do great, large things. Why is it really difficult to just make an impact on one person? Why is it such a challenge to reach one person and to change one life? I wanted to understand this. I was like, God, why is this so hard? Why does it take so much effort to get such a small result? And we're still carrying this lineage from the beginning. With Adam and Eve, we didn't get the first example, and that's what has continued on. So that's what's been there from the beginning, and we're still kind of trying to shed that and create something new, to create a new lineage, a heavenly lineage. And yeah, I was really trying to understand that, and when I just was doing my normal daily reading, this is what I read. I wanted an answer, and I was lucky enough to find it this time. I was really thankful for that. It doesn't always happen. I don't always have these great, powerful, moving prayers every time I pray. I don't always have inspiration. And I'm trying to also be able to inspire other people or be accountable to help them find their own inspiration. So sometimes we can't have inspiration come to us. It doesn't come to us when we're waiting. And so when I'm thinking about inspiration, I want to give you something today, but also as you leave here, I want to just suggest some ideas that, try and inspire yourself or try and create your own inspiration. If you can't inspire yourself or you don't feel inspired, maybe you can inspire someone else with something simple or just being in someone's life. We don't always know the impact that we make until we hear about it or until we make a lot of effort and there's a change in someone else's life. And I think that's an opportunity that we can have to really inspire ourselves and inspire other people. The TribeNet calls actually are an excellent way to find inspiration. And it's not just if you're a tribal messiah. There are excellent, amazing things that are shared there that aren't necessarily broadcast, or they're shared later, like in the weekly updates that you saw. But we hear from our president, we hear from our sub-regional leaders, we hear from Bishop Kim, and Bishop Kim goes wherever True Mother goes. If you want to hear from True Mother, you should be listening to Bishop Kim too. His life's mission is to do everything that True Mother is asking him to do, and to almost be like a shadow and to mirror her. So he's a great person to connect to. And this last call on Tuesday, there was a couple from Denver, Colorado, the pastors there, Mike and Adonia Hendrich. And I was so grateful that they shared. I knew they had a really beautiful Sunday service ministry, that they had a thriving and growing church community. They are proof that it's working, and I think we should all be paying attention and taking notes to what they are doing. What they talked about, just to briefly summarize it, was a lot of what they did for meeting new people, or if someone new walked through the door who they'd never met, what are they doing to make them feel welcome, to make them feel so loved that they just want to come back? You don't even have to invite them. They wanted to design kind of a welcoming ministry and to really make it feel personal. And people weren't just looking for a church that talks about the word. They were looking for that, but they would be testing out other churches. And what they're really looking for is, where do they feel drawn to? Where do they feel connected to? another thing that they shared is that they didn't just figure this out and it worked right away. It was not just a trial and error process, but it was a lot of effort and preparation that went into making it work. And they seem to have found something that worked. They really had to change their own concepts about members in their own community. And the way that they described it was that they had to kind of just let God work, let God's miracles work, because that's what God does. That the infinite God, the creator of the universe, is so capable of making things happen. And when we can just do a couple of things, then heaven's blessings can really open up. And I think that's what's happening there. And I think that can happen in other places too. So I'm taking notes. I hope you can all help me with that. So when I was thinking about what kind of an inspiration I wanted to talk about, or what I could share, there were two people who I kind of came across, and I wanted to talk about them and their stories, because there are people who we recognize their names, what they've done, but there are also other people who I found made significant impacts that chances are I didn't know their faces or their names before I read about them, and they have done incredible things. So I'm going to share two stories of two really amazing individuals, and I'm going to make a point of what I'm sharing. So the first one is Colonel Rick Rescorla. We'll get this up on the screen there. There's Colonel Rick. Colonel Rick Rescorla was originally from the United Kingdom, but he grew to be very fond of the United States because of a close friend. And he eventually became a U.S. citizen, served as an officer in the Vietnam War, where he was recognized for his strong but compassionate leadership. And he's actually a fairly famous person. There's a depiction of him on a very famous book about the Vietnam War. On the cover of a movie is also kind of a depiction of a famous picture of him when he was younger. And when he left after the Vietnam War was over, he got into working into private security, and he just kind of rose above the ranks and got to kind of higher and higher places. And eventually, he had a friend who worked at the World Trade Center. And he asked him, will you take a look at our security? Will you test it out and just tell me what you think with how safe things are? And so he's just kind of going through the building. He's checking things out, and he said, "Can you take me to the basement? Can you show me that?" And as they're going down, they make their way to the basement, and he's looking around, and he went through, and he said, "The first problem that you have is that no one stopped me from going into the basement. There was no security checkpoint. And I can see right there that there's a load-bearing column. And, from a security standpoint, the first thing I would think about is protecting that, because if I were trying to damage this building, I would try to basically attack that load-bearing column." And Colonel Rescorla, he eventually worked with security for Morgan Stanley in the building. And working through this here, he was really concerned about the World Trade Center itself. And there was a plane that was hijacked, an international flight. And immediately after that, he felt that the World Trade Center would be a target. And he was really trying to convey this message. And he was warning the New York and New Jersey Port Authority, who was kind of responsible for this. And he said, this is an issue. You guys really need to take care of this. And they actually didn't listen to his warnings, both before and after, in 1993, when there was a truck that was exploded right at the column that he said would happen. He said, if I were to try and do something, I would take a truck, fill it with explosives, and bring it there. And that's exactly what happened. And so people weren't listening to him, and he had this awareness. And he actually said it's going to happen again. He predicted it would happen the first time. He predicted it would happen the second time. And he predicted that each time it would be an extremist Muslim group that would be behind it. And when people weren't listening to him, he took it upon himself to train all of his employees in the World Trade Center building he worked. So there's roughly 2,700, almost 3,000 employees that he was kind of responsible for as head of security. And every 3 months, he would train them to do an evacuation, just without warning, just start marching people out. And if you can imagine that every 3 months, clearing out a 40, 50-story building full of thousands of people trying to do their work, people lose productivity, the management has to leave their meetings, it just kind of disrupts things, and people had a resistance to this. But he just continued on. He said, I know what I'm doing, I know why I'm doing it. And thank God that he did that. So on September 11th, 2001, that fateful day, after successfully evacuating most of Morgan Stanley's 2,687 employees, he went back into the building. When one of his colleagues told him he had to evacuate the World Trade Center, Riscola replied, "As soon as I make sure everyone else is out." He was last seen on the 10th floor heading upward, shortly before the South Tower collapsed at 9:59 a.m. His remains were never found. So later he was pronounced dead because of what he did. There are some estimates that all but 6 or 7 of his employees made it out of the building. And it wasn't just one moment where he really got to shine. This was a lifetime of dedication and service to others. And this was kind of the culmination of that moment. So September's kind of a month for other things. It's a season change. It's, I don't know, business things, but it's also a time to commemorate people like him. So their names are more well known because he saved all those people. There were kids who got to see their parents come home, and he made that sacrifice to make that happen. So I'm personally grateful to him. He loved this country very much. He said, it's a country where anything is possible, and that's the place where I want to live. He came here when he was 28. And that's what really inspired him about America. And he was a true patriot. And so I'm really grateful to him because of what he did. To kind of explain what kind of person he was, he would really build morale with his troops in Vietnam. And he would sing them songs. And he would, whatever he wanted in the people around him, he was instilling and leading within himself. And I don't know how this song goes or how you would sing it, so I'm going to kind of read it like a poem. But this is what he read to his soldiers, or what he would kind of sing out. And this is what he was singing to the people in the World Trade Center. And a lot of people said it was a really big source of comfort. They didn't know why he did it during the drills. He would be singing during the drills as well when they would practice. But they said it was so comforting on that day to hear his kind of familiar, soothing voice. Men of Cornwall, stop your dreaming. Can't you see their spear points gleaming? See their warriors' pennants streaming to this battlefield. Men of Cornwall, stand ye ready. It cannot be ever said, ye for the battle were not ready. Stand and never yield. Another song that he sang was God Bless America on that day. And we thank you. Another, yeah, give him a hand. I couldn't find a great picture of this wonderful person. His name is James Christopher Harrison. He's donating blood in this picture. It's something he was come to be well known for. And this is a picture of the last time that he did it, the last time that he was able to. So I'm just going to read along here. In 1951, a 14-year-old Australian boy named James Harrison awoke from a major chest operation. Doctors had removed one of his lungs in a successful procedure made possible thanks to a vast quantity of transfused blood he had received, his father explained to him. He said that I had 13 units of blood and my life had been saved by unknown people. It'd be 4 years before Harrison was eligible, but he vowed then that he too would become a blood donor when he was old enough. After turning 18, Harrison started donating blood and continued for more than 60 years. The plasma from his blood had been used to make millions of anti-D injections to help prevent miscarriages and brain damage in newborn children. Because about 17% of pregnant women in Australia require the anti-D injections, the Red Cross estimates Harrison helped 2.4 million babies in the country. This is a quote from the researcher who was looking for blood donors who had the kind of blood that Mr. Harrison had. And what she said was, every ampule or container of anti-D ever made in Australia has James in it. He has saved millions of babies. And I cried just thinking about it. At age 81, he had already passed the age limit allowed for donors, and the Blood Service had decided Harrison should stop donating to protect his health, the Sydney Morning Herald reported. Harrison told the Red Cross that he is eager for his legacy of 1,173 donations to be surpassed. And his words were, "I hope it's a record that somebody breaks, because it will mean they are dedicated to the cause." So I found this from an article in 2018, so it was fairly recent. His last donation, I think, was either 2016 or 2018. And again, it wasn't just one day where he made a difference. It was a concentrated effort and a dedicated output of selflessness. And over a day, over a couple weeks or months, a year or two, you may think, I'm in his case, I'm donating blood. I hope it's going to someone and really helping them for what they need. And you don't get to see that whole volume of blood in one place. Maybe that's for the better if you're squeamish. But he just kept at it, and he was committed to it. It was something like every 3 weeks, or basically the minimum amount of time he needed to continue to donate plasma. And he kept on doing that. And he knew he was the only one who was able to do it. And after 60 years, a lifetime of doing that, he changed millions of lives. So many lives. Even one of his children wrote a public message thanking her father. "Thank you, Dad. I needed this injection. You helped make my baby be delivered." And it just kind of speaks to that it's a continued dedicated effort that, when elapsed over time, creates something so impactful. And I think about what a unificationist would do if they were donating an organ or donating blood or donating plasma, what they would do to prepare. An extreme level of dedication, not just I'm going to donate blood, but if I were to think about what would true father do, what would true mother do, I feel that they would eat the best food. They would eat the most nutritious food they could find. They would exercise, they would rest, and would even pray, "God, I want to give whoever receives this blood or this organ the most healthy amount of vitality they can receive. I want to pray that just a couple drops of blood that I can give can just instantly bring someone back to their spirits, back to their wellness with whatever condition they're trying to overcome." And both of these people, I think, accomplished really amazing things and really made an impact and touched so many lives. I can't speak to their personal motivations or what their relationship with God was like. To me, it seems like they had to have some kind of motivation to continue doing what they did. But in a sense, kind of what they did was right in front of them. It wasn't, delivering a Sunday service message. It wasn't uniting Christian clergy to be one church, to be one faith. It's not. I'm not saying it's in the absence of the Spirit, but it may not be per se just kind of led in the Spirit or leading from a place coming from God. So when I think about their example, what they've done in their lives, I think about what could happen if someone or multiple people did things what these two people did, but from the starting point, it was with God. if you could save 20 million children or 200 million children and their families, it's amazing. When I was talking about the Denver Family Church and how they tried to let go and let God take care of things, once they could just do what they needed to and just let God work, that miracles just started unfolding before them, and people were just coming in droves to their church and joining their church too. And that's why I wanted to talk about living in the Spirit or living with the Spirit, is it can take you to another level of living. And this is proof. These are people who just on a simple level did something simple or did something maybe more complicated or dedicated, but they really amounted to something beautiful at the end of their offering. And True Parents have said for a long time that the UN needs to be acknowledging the role of God in world peace, that religious leaders need to be in a consulting position to the UN, that world peace won't be achieved without the Spirit of God, without the life of God, and without the input and the participation of world leaders. And that's kind of how I see this all fitting in together, is that the greatest goals and the greatest desires we have to accomplish, they'll be accomplished when we integrate God and we include God's principles into them, and that's how we can make them happen. And so, on another topic, this is a picture that will load, please. I keep this on my desktop at my work, and I see it probably once a week or once every few days, and I try to surround myself with something that inspires me. Some people will do that with goals. They'll kind of like slap a goal on the door on their way out to work or to leaving for the day. And I think that's a really healthy mindset to go about your life when you have a routine, when you have predictable days, when things are kind of the same. You have to be your own subject in your life, and you have to make something of your day, otherwise they'll pass you by and you'll be 10, 15 years away from where you started. And I like this image. I'll pull it up here if my computer cooperates. But I personally really like nature, and that's what I want to have around me. That's what I try to just kind of have near me. I don't always get to have it with where I live. A nice little forest walk isn't right in my backyard. And so I do what I can. And what's interesting about this picture is kind of the way that the sun, the setting sun is like curling around this wave. And it's just like the perfect shot. That instant, that moment was the perfect time to get a picture. And it was really nice that someone caught it. And so when I was looking at it and when I was thinking about it, a lot of times when I'm at work, I think I would much rather be there. I would much rather be riding on a wave, looking at a sunset, sitting on a beach, and go to sleep in a hammock and look at the stars at night. I would much rather be doing that than where I'm at my desk and just working. And I began to think about it a little bit more. What if I could be there? What if I could be in that moment in time? And then what if that moment continued that way? If the waves kept moving, but the sun stayed the same, if that was kind of it, that the sun didn't move, I got it, I'm at the beach, I can hear the nice, relaxing waves rushing in, but I'm just stuck in that moment, and the sun doesn't go anywhere. And you would be really happy. At first, it wouldn't bother you. I'm talking about myself here. At first, I'd be happy. At first, it wouldn't bother me. And then I would think, I'm looking for things. Like, there's no sun, there's no lights. It might be a remote island, so there's not a lot of electricity available. Where can I find things if I'm there with other people? Is this my toothbrush or is it yours? I can't see. There's not enough light. Where did I leave my shoes? Now I'm going to walk barefoot and step on a branch and hurt my foot. So here it is. And I just really like the picture, and I keep a few of these as a background on my computer to just connect to this and to think about it, and to motivate myself that sooner or later I'm going to end up here somewhere like it. And you can see there's not a lot of light. This is the end of a day of maybe barbecuing and having a great time. But if you go back into those trees or whatever is behind you, you're going to have a bad time trying to find things if you're going to live there day and night. There's not going to be a sunrise that kind of gets you going in the morning and makes you productive and gets things done. And what I'm saying with all of this is that there's this cycle with the sun of rising and setting, and it kind of leads the way for us to do things throughout the day. And I feel like it's a microcosm of seasons, and we're kind of in a season change now, and so that's what got me thinking about this. And I personally appreciate seasons. I don't always feel grateful for them, but I am grateful that there is kind of a life cycle to everything around you and around us. With every season that comes, it's always something moving, always something changing, so that it's not stuck in a moment in life. And I wanted to leave you with something to think about, maybe something you can discuss, is kind of what season of life are you in right now? Because your life will never be the same for more than 5 or 10 years at the most. If you have kids, it might not be the same for 6 months or 2 days, I don't know. Depending on your work, your family situation, where you live, your life will never be the same for decades and decades at a time. I hope it isn't. There should be some things that are improving, at least on your end, on the effort that you're making or the impact you're making. And what season of life are you in right now, if you can identify one? Or what is it like for you? What kind of emotions does it bring for you? And then another question you can think about is, are you in a transition period of the seasons kind of in your life, if we're working with this metaphor? What was coming before you, and what kind of season are you transitioning to now? What's changing? What's becoming different? And what do you want to change? What do you want to be better? Okay, and I think that's what I just wanted to leave you with, so I'll pray to wrap up. Good morning, our dearest, loving Heavenly Parent and true parents. As we reflect on the life examples of Colonel Rick Rescorla and James Christopher Harrison and many other leaders and people who have changed the world with or without recognition, we thank them and we want to honor them. We want to think of their families and how we can take their successes and the world that they've helped us live in, and how to beautify it and make it even better when they were there to see it. We want to be living in the Spirit and led in the Spirit by you, God. And we know that we have to make some things possible in order for that to be so. I hope that we can open up our hearts. Your words speak to us, and they speak to our original minds and our original character that still exists within us. And I hope that we can reach that and feel that and know when it's speaking to us, and know that when you are speaking to us, that's how you do it. I pray that this day and the coming days can be days that we want to dwell closer and closer to you, and to know where we are now, where we've come from, and know where we're going, to be awake and recognizing that, to feel it in our spirit, and to feel the spirit of our true parents who are leading us into amazing, blossoming, heavenly seasons. We are so grateful to have our community. We are thankful that we exist and that we can congregate together and learn and grow as a family. So I pray that this family can exist as one and be close and nurture each other and support one another as a functioning, living body of helpers and hands and arms and legs that move and create and grow together. We love you so much, God, and we seek to connect to your heart every day. We thank you for this time, and we offer and report all these things in the names of all blessed families represented here. Amen and on you.
Pastor Nathan for that message. We would now like to take a minute to silently reflect on living with the Spirit and whatever we inspired us during the sermon. We'll then listen to a tithing message and then collect the offering.